Welcome back to Girlfriend Betrayal Diaries. Have you ever trusted someone so much only to have them break your heart in ways you never imagined? Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced betrayal like this. And if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe because today's story might just leave you questioning everything about love and trust. The day I discovered my wife's betrayal wasn't marked by thunder or dramatic music. It was an ordinary Tuesday in April, when the life I thought I knew shattered like glass beneath my feet. "Hey, is your phone charging?" Melanie called from the kitchen as I was getting dressed for work. "Yeah, it's in our room." "Why?" "Mine's dead, and I need to call the plumber." "The kitchen sink is backing up again." I finished buttoning my shirt and headed downstairs, the smell of coffee filling our modest two-story home. The home we'd saved for. The home where we planned to raise a family someday. Melanie stood by the counter, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the faded university sweatshirt I'd given her on our first anniversary. 5 years had passed since then. 5 years of building a life together, of inside jokes and shared dreams, of weathering financial struggles and celebrating small victories. "I'll be home early today," I said, kissing her forehead. "Maybe we can check out that new Italian place you've been wanting to try?" She smiled, but there was something off about it, a hesitation I might have missed if I hadn't known every expression on her face. "Sure. Sounds good." I grabbed my keys and briefcase, pausing at the door to look back at her. She was already absorbed in her phone, thumbs tapping rapidly against the screen. If only I'd paid more attention to that moment. They say ignorance is bliss, and for months, I'd been living in a fool's paradise. The first hint came from my college buddy Marcus. We'd been friends for over 15 years, the kind of friendship that survives distance and life changes. He called me on a Thursday evening while I was working late. "Hey man, you got a minute?" "For you?" "Always." "What's up?" His voice was hesitant, unusual for someone who typically spoke with the confidence of a motivational speaker. "Look, I don't know how to say this, but I saw Melanie yesterday at the Greenbrier Hotel." I laughed. "Okay. She probably had a meeting there or something." Melanie worked in event planning for a corporate firm downtown. She was with someone, a guy. My heart did a small stutter step, but rationality quickly took over. Probably a client. James. They were holding hands, and they went into a room together. His voice had dropped to almost a whisper. "I'm sorry, man. I wouldn't tell you if I wasn't sure." The world seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the edge of my desk. "There has to be an explanation," I said, more to myself than to Marcus. "I appreciate you telling me, but there's no way." "I hope I'm wrong," he said. "Just keep your eyes open." That night I watched Melanie move around our kitchen, humming as she chopped vegetables for dinner. Her phone chimed and she glanced at it, a small smile playing on her lips before she turned it face down on the counter. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Just work," she said without looking up. "The Johnson wedding is next weekend and the mother of the bride is driving everyone crazy." I nodded, studying her profile. The woman I'd fallen in love with during our senior year of college, the woman who'd nursed me through pneumonia 3 winters ago, who knew how I took my coffee, who could finish my sentences. Could this person betray me? Over the next few weeks I became a detective in my own home. I noticed patterns I'd been blind to before. Late nights at work, weekends filled with emergency client meetings. The way she guarded her phone, always keeping it within reach, password changed from our anniversary date to something I didn't know. One night she came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne, her lipstick slightly smudged at the corner. "Traffic was awful," she said, dropping her bag and kicking off her heels. "How was your day?" I studied her face, searching for the woman I thought I knew. "Fine. Dinner's in the fridge if you're hungry." She reached for her phone immediately, turning away as she checked it. "I already ate. I'm going to take a shower." As the bathroom door closed behind her, I sat on our couch, a hollowness expanding in my chest. The house that had once felt like home now seemed like a stage set where we were both playing roles. I wrestled with myself about checking her phone, hating the person I was becoming. The person's suspicion was turning me into. But the next morning, as she showered, I gave in to the gnawing doubt. Her phone lay on the nightstand, and by some miracle she had forgotten to lock it. The text messages between her and Greg W. told a story I couldn't bear to read but couldn't look away from. Intimate exchanges, plans for their next meeting, jokes at my expense. "He's clueless," Melanie had written. "Said he wants to take me to dinner tonight. If only he knew where I was yesterday afternoon." Greg's response: "His loss is my gain. You deserve someone who excites you." The timestamp showed some messages sent while she lay beside me in bed, others while we sat across from each other at dinner. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair, it was in the mockery, the casual cruelty of it. The way they laughed at my trust. When she emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her hair dripping onto her shoulders, I was sitting motionless on the edge of the bed. "You're going to be late," she said, misreading my stillness. I looked up at her, this stranger wearing my wife's face. "Who's Greg?" The color drained from her cheeks, the only confirmation I needed. Still, she tried. "A client." "Why?" "Don't." My voice was surprisingly steady. "You forgot to lock your phone." She froze, the towel clutched tightly around her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking of the bedside clock seemed deafening. "James, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been laughing at me behind my back, how I'm clueless." Her expression shifted from shock to a strange defiance. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" She sank into the chair by the window, her shoulders slumping. 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of coming home to me after being with him, of accepting my love while giving hers to someone else. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, my voice hollow. She looked at me then, her eyes filled with tears that provoked no sympathy in me. "I don't know. I didn't want to hurt you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "That's thoughtful of you." "It just happened, James. We were working together on the Miller account, and there was this connection." "Save it." I cut her off, standing up. "I don't need the details. I need you to pack a bag and leave." Her eyes widened. "You're kicking me out, just like that?" "Just like what, Melanie? Just like you've been cheating on me for half a year? Just like you've been mocking me to your lover? What did you expect?" She started crying then, real tears that streaked down her face. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I'm sure Greg has room for you," I said coldly, walking out of the bedroom. Behind me, I heard her sob. Once it would have broken my heart to hear her cry. Now it felt like a performance I no longer had to applaud. The next week passed in a blur. Melanie moved most of her things out while I was at work, leaving her key on the kitchen counter. Friends called, having heard fragments of the story. I avoided most of them, not ready to become someone's cautionary tale. I took time off work, unable to focus on spreadsheets and client meetings when my personal life had imploded. I slept on the couch, our bed a crime scene I couldn't bear to revisit. And then on a night when the silence of the house was suffocating me, I did something I'm not proud of. I looked up Greg Wilson on social media. There he was, the man who had destroyed my marriage. Handsome in a generic way, with carefully styled hair and the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never questioned his place in the world. His profile showed a man who enjoyed expensive restaurants, outdoor adventures, and apparently other men's wives. What caught my attention wasn't his smugness, but a detail in his background. He was a partner at Melanie's firm, significantly more senior than her. A married partner, according to the family photos prominently displayed on his page. Photos that included a beautiful wife and 2 young children. A cold, clarifying anger washed over me. This wasn't just about Melanie anymore. This was about a predator who used his position to seduce my wife, while his own family remained in the dark. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. I didn't act immediately. Instead, I did my research. I discovered that Greg's wife, Sarah, ran a successful interior design business, that their children attended an exclusive private school, that they lived in a sprawling suburban home that featured in a local magazine's Home of the Month spread last year. I learned that Greg was up for managing partner at the firm, a promotion that would cement his professional legacy, that he sat on the board of his children's school and the ethics committee at his country club, a man with everything to lose. I debated my next move carefully. Part of me wanted scorched earth, to expose him publicly, to watch his perfect life burn to the ground the way mine had. But another part, the part that still believed in some kind of justice, held me back from total destruction. After 3 days of deliberation, I made my decision. I would confront him privately first, give him one chance to end things with Melanie, and confess to his wife. If he refused, all bets were off. I sent him an email from an anonymous account requesting a meeting at a quiet bar downtown. I didn't identify myself, only indicating that I had information regarding his relationship with Melanie Stevens that would interest him greatly. He replied within an hour, suggesting we meet that evening. The bar was dimly lit, jazz playing softly. In the background, I arrived early, choosing a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. When Greg walked in at exactly 7 p.m., I recognized him immediately from his photos, though he was smaller in person than I had imagined. He scanned the room, and I raised my hand slightly. He approached with the easy confidence of someone used to controlling every situation. "You wanted to meet?" he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thanks for coming, Greg." I watched recognition dawn on his face as he realized who I was. To his credit, he didn't flee. His expression shifted from surprise to a careful neutrality. James, I presume, in the flesh. He signaled to the bartender for a drink. I had a feeling this might happen eventually. Did you? Seems like you and Melanie thought I was pretty clueless. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Look, I'm sorry about how things turned out. These situations are always complicated. Are they? Seems simple to me. You pursued my wife. She gave in. You both lied and cheated and thought it was funny. His drink arrived, whiskey neat, and he took a long sip before responding. What do you want, James? Money? To punch me? What will make this go away? I leaned forward. Does Sarah know? The color drained from his face. Leave my family out of this. Like you left mine out of it? I asked quietly. Your kids must be, what, 8 and 10? That's a tough age for parents to split up. Are you threatening me? His voice had an edge now. I'm giving you a choice, I said. End it with Melanie. Today. Tell your wife what you've done. Take responsibility. If you do that, I walk away. If not, I shrugged. Sarah gets an interesting package of information. So does the managing partner at your firm, and the ethics committee at Oakwood Country Club. He stared at me, his knuckles white around his glass. You think I'm afraid of you? I think you're afraid of consequences, as you should be. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Do you think Melanie will come running back to you if I end things? She's done with you, man. Accept it and move on. I felt a flash of pain at his words, but pushed it aside. This isn't about getting her back. This is about you facing what you've done. And if I refuse? Then I hope you've saved for your children's therapy, I said, standing up. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. I'll know which choice you make. I walked out without looking back, my heart hammering in my chest, but my mind clearer than it had been in weeks. I didn't sleep that night, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Had I stooped to their level? Become the very thing I despised at AITA? 2 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. Greg had made his choice. By morning, I had compiled everything, screenshots of the text exchanges between him and Melanie, including ones where they mocked me and his wife, dates and times of their hotel meetings, credit card statements showing the rooms he'd paid for. I even had photos Marcus had taken that day at the Greenbrier, proof I hadn't asked for but was now grateful to have. I created 3 identical packages, one for Sarah Wilson, one for Alden and Burke's managing partner, one for the president of Oakwood's ethics committee. As I sealed the last envelope, my doorbell rang. Melanie stood on the porch, her eyes red-rimmed, wearing the same sweatshirt she'd had on the day I discovered her betrayal. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered the house cautiously, as if it might reject her. "Greg ended things," she said without preamble. "Said he couldn't do this anymore, that his family had to come first." I leaned against the wall, studying her. "I'm sorry to hear that." She looked at me sharply. "Did you have something to do with this?" "We had a conversation. You threatened him." "I gave him a choice," I corrected. "He made it." She sank onto the couch, our couch, where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies, where I'd held her during thunderstorms that frightened her, where we'd dreamed about our future. "So that's it? You've ruined everything?" The unfairness of her accusation was breathtaking. "I ruined everything. It wasn't perfect between us, James, you know that. We were going through the motions. Greg made me feel alive again. And that justifies lying to me, mocking me behind my back?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did. Every day for 6 months you chose to hurt me." Tears filled her eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry. But what now? Do we just throw away 5 years?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a profound sadness replace the anger that had sustained me. "You already did that, Mel. The moment you decided I wasn't worth the truth." She started crying then, deep body-shaking sobs. Once I would have comforted her. Now I watched with a detachment that surprised me. "I messed up," she gasped between sobs. "I know I did. But people make mistakes, don't they? Don't we deserve a second chance?" "Did you give me one?" I asked quietly. "Did you come to me and say you were unhappy? That something was missing? Did you give us a chance to fix things before you turned to someone else?" She couldn't meet my eyes. "I was afraid. And I deserved better," I said simply. "We both know that." She wiped her eyes, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. "So what happens now?" I glanced at the sealed envelopes on the table. "Now you leave. You build a new life. And so do I." "Just like that? It's over?" "It was over. The first time you met him in that hotel, Melanie. We're just acknowledging it now." She stood up, shoulders slumped in defeat. "For what it's worth, I did love you. Do love you in my way." "It's worth less than you think," I said, opening the front door. She paused on the threshold. "Will you be okay?" The question was so unexpected, so sincere, that it caught me off guard. "Eventually," I said honestly, "but not because of anything you've done." After she left, I looked at the packages on the table. Evidence of betrayal. Ammunition for revenge. With a deep breath, I gathered them up and dropped them into the kitchen. Trash. Greg had made his choice. He'd chosen his family, his career, his reputation, not out of nobility but out of fear. In a way, I'd already taught him the lesson he needed to learn, that actions have consequences, that the house of cards we build can collapse with a single misstep. As for Melanie, she would have to live with her choices, and I would have to live with mine. 2 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown when I spotted them, Sarah and Greg Wilson, heads bent close together at a table by the window. She was talking animatedly, her hands moving as she spoke. He was listening intently, nodding occasionally, his expression one of someone working hard to earn forgiveness. Don't know if he had confessed everything or just enough to save his marriage. I don't know what promises he'd made or what atonement he'd committed to, but I knew that by walking away from my revenge, I had given them both a chance at redemption, as, for me, the pain hadn't disappeared. There were still nights when I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Days when a song or a scent would transport me back to happier times. but the acute agony had dulled to a manageable ache. I had learned that betrayal doesn't define you, it's what you do in its aftermath that reveals your character. Melanie had moved to Seattle for a fresh start. We communicated only through lawyers now, the divorce proceedings civil but final. She'd sent me one last message before leaving. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I hadn't responded. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. As I watched the Wilsons in the coffee shop, Sarah reached across the table and took Greg's hand. A gesture of forgiveness, perhaps. Or maybe just a reminder of what he had almost lost. I gathered my things and left without them seeing me. I had taught Greg Wilson a painful lesson, but in the process, I had learned one myself. That sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to destroy someone who has wronged you, but to walk away and let them face themselves in the mirror each morning. That, I had discovered, was a far more lasting punishment than any revenge I could have orchestrated. And as I stepped out into the sunshine, I realized I was finally ready for whatever came next.